universe, where you learn the secrets of the social media through the social universe, and in many cases the secrets of the universe itself. And we have John Rowan here, and during break we were talking a little bit more about the personal sacrifices that we have to take in order to keep our integrity, and not just our own personal integrity, but the integrity of a system. And sometimes it takes that sacrifice to be able to keep the system clean. Is kind of where we left our last discussion. So in talking more with John, in fact, John, I'll let you explain the ethics, since you were teaching as an ethics professor at the same time, that hypocritical notion that if a police officer does something, that the police officer can do no wrong. That is one of the fundamental problems in the belief system that leads to corruption. But if you could share a little bit more about that, and I'll also, because it's hard for you to say these words, but essentially, if you had gone along with the system, you would still have that job today, and there would have been a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and you would still have that job. But since you stood up for your principles in a situation under oath that you knew that you might lose your job, you still took one for ethics, in the name of ethics. But tell us a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Kurt. But I mean, first of all, no one's above the law. Mm-hmm. And I was a professor at the time, and I still am, where I teach ethics in law enforcement and community policing. And I could just not become a hypocrite and violate the law myself. So I testified, against the misconduct. Using a reasonable person standard, it is very clear to me that a police officer caused this young man's death and that other police officers have covered it up. And here in Maricopa County, no one wanted to investigate or ever wants to investigate a police department, if you've noticed out here. Right. So the sheriff wouldn't. 3 years later, he sent someone to take a look at the police car 3 years after the fact. The case has still gone unsolved at this time. And I knew when I took a stance that more likely than not, even though I am officially covered by the Whistleblower Act, that this small town would not care. And they did not, and I lost my job as a result of it.
Gotcha. And again, I think it's a badge of honor that people will know that if something happens wrong in a department that you run, that you would do some self-analysis, meaning internal analysis, and actually come out, even if you're not looking the prettiest or smelling the nicest, that whatever it is going to be the truth.
Absolutely, and it's this background of ethics that I want to use because there are also numerous allegations against the sheriff's department here, and that's a reason why I think I'm an ideal candidate for the position of sheriff of Maricopa County.
You bet. Now, tell us a little bit about how the campaign is going, and what it's like to be on that campaign trail. I think a lot of people have, you were kind of mentioning before the show began, people have a surprise and have many different and interesting and varied questions. But what has been what's the true story of the campaign, and what it's like being on the campaign trail?
Yeah, running for the position of sheriff in Maricopa County in Arizona is absolutely amazing and unique. Because people come up to me, the press will ask me once a week, if I'm sheriff, do I plan on abiding by the rule of law? Nowhere else in America will you be asked that question. And you're laughing because you're a local. The current sheriff here does whatever he feels like, regardless of the Constitution or state law or anything else. Once again, I don't know if your listeners are aware, but the local state bar did an investigative report a month ago where they said the sheriff formed a criminal conspiracy to put innocent people in jail.
Wow.
So that's why reporters have to ask you here, the ridiculous question, are you going to abide by the Constitution of the United States? And, once in a while you want to have a laugh and go, no, I'm just going to do whatever I feel like just to see what they say.
That would be the soundbite, though.
That would be the soundbite, yeah, exactly. And it's so bizarre, and some of the things that go on here, and, there is some truth to the fact he does have a war chest, of sizable amount of money that I have to go up against. But my thing is, he needs that. The last 4 years of his administration have been a disaster. And everyone locally knows that. So he needs a lot of that money just to cover up all the mistakes that's happened in the last 4 years.
Sure. I mean, anytime there has been a system in place that long, I mean, it would be a complete, I mean, he would be a demigod to be able to control things in a perfect way, even if everything were perfectly orchestrated. I mean, you know that from being at the head of the police department. People will act in unison with 100% ethics at all times. So, you know, for there not to be some systemic problems, even if he weren't orchestrating any, that would be next to an impossibility. And so, again, if for no other reason, just having change, there needs to be change in so long. If it were a couple of terms, okay, I get it. But anytime we have so much power centered in one particular place, change can be a good thing. Speak to us a little bit about what change would mean. You know, if you got into office, yes, you'd abide by the rule of law, but what would that change mean if you were in office?
The first thing it would mean would be accountability. There is absolutely zero accountability for almost any infraction that takes place committed by almost any deputy in that organization. There's almost no discipline whatsoever. And I tell people within 30 days I'm going to restore the power of that office back to the people. What that means is I'm going to have a citizen complaint review board up and running within 30 days where members of the community will look at all the disciplinary infractions that have taken place, and they'll make a recommendation to me, the sheriff, what they think the discipline for this deputy should be. The other thing is, once again for your listeners, is we've had hundreds of serious crimes that have just gone uninvestigated. Even when the defendant, the bad guy, was known to the victim, you know, we had over 400 sexual assault cases that just weren't investigated. You know, that will not happen ever when I'm sheriff. I will hold them accountable. Not a single case will go uninvestigated. And once again, for local listeners know, you know, we didn't have the resources to investigate these sexual assaults, but when Steven Seagal shows up with a camera crew, all of a sudden he gets a helicopter, 2 tanks, and over 70 deputies.
Right.
To go out and raid a rancher raising roosters by himself.
Wow.
Yeah.
But we don't have the resources to cover other things. Here's something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's a kind of a rough subject to bring up, but there's one of the things that when we use the term human trafficking, a lot of people don't understand that there's a subcategory of that, and it's a very large subcategory, which has to do with literally slavery of human beings, normally women and children that are being sold into sex slavery. And Phoenix is one of the highest traffic areas for that. Is there anything in if you were in office, that would change to be able to help reduce that? Because that slavery is almost as large as the slavery that we did away with in the 1800s. Oh,
absolutely. That's a very serious crime. And often that's being committed by the coyotes that traffic them up from Mexico and hold them against their will in homes here. And that's certainly crimes that need to be investigated. And often tips are brought in. And that's the ones that we should go after and conduct full investigations and rescue those people.
Absolutely. There's just so, and that was a question I actually didn't even mean to bring up today. I didn't think I was going to bring up, but it's something that, you know, I work with nonprofits that do give shelter and give try to get the word out, because it's hard enough to get the word out in advertising in the first place, but to be able, you can imagine how hard it is to say, hey, I have a home and a shelter for you, but how do you get that to somebody who can't even communicate with that 2 feet outside of the walls that they've been imprisoned in? It's next to impossible. So these are all things that it's an atrocity that when it was out in the open, you could say, okay, everybody, we're signing the Emancipation Proclamation, and then everybody's free. But that is something you can't just do now. It's all underground, and that's something that is very near and dear to my heart. So enough of my agenda. Let's move on to the other subject. We're actually getting close to break. What would you say is the one thing that personifies who you would be in office? And then I want to cover kind of the platform that you have. I know that it's not a normal political platform. It's more about the delivery of the laws. To make sure that you deliver justice for the laws. But what would be the one big characteristic you would like people to remember you for?
For a leader who cares, who's going to lower crime and really take care of the victims. When is the last time the sheriff here has been out to the scene of a crime? When is the last time the sheriff here has talked to the family of a homicide victim and sat down and briefed them a month later or 60 days later and told them where the case is and where it's going? One of the things I've done in the past is I've trained thousands of other police chiefs from around the world in how to lower crime. And they're always shocked from other countries. Wait, you give the bad guy a lawyer, but you don't give the victim a free lawyer. They're shocked by that. I would like to do so much more for the victims of crime here in Maricopa County.
Absolutely. So victims' rights and advocacy. Excellent. So we're going to take one more break, and then we'll tune back in with John Rowan, who is running for the sheriff's position against Sheriff Arpaio here in Arizona, and we will tune in after the break to learn about what his administration would be like, and we encourage you to stick with us, because I think this will be the true meat of the show. I look forward to talking to you after the break.